Well, we talk about the importance of numerous Acadians to culture, to linguistics, to sports, to the overall pride we have as English and French speaking Acadians. But this guy was sort of the rebel of our group who basically believed, and as I do as well, because I have a mixed ancestry, that Acadian Metis do exist. Now that's very controversial for a lot of status and different people. You have your opinion, I have mine. But today we're going to be talking about the life and legacy of the person that maybe fought the longest for recognition of Acadian Métis and Acadian rights in New Brunswick from pillar to post. It has to be this person who passed away last week of numerous ailments, including cancer. Of course, it's Jackie Vautour. Now, Jackie Vautour, by profession, was a Canadian fisherman. He was born in Clairefontaine, New Brunswick, but he was best known for his fight against the expropriation of 200 families and their land in the early 1970s to create the Kouchibouguac National Park on land formerly occupied by a village. Now, he was either born in 1928 or in 29 in Clairefontaine. He and his wife Yvonne have 9 children who have been active in the Votour file, including Edmond, Roy, Ronnie, Rocky, Jean, Linda, Simone, Maureen, and Rochelle. Now, he is called the rebel of Kouchibouguac, but in a good way. He never fired a gun. He never basically did anything but state what he thought these rights would be. But you're going to see the legal case he was involved with actually only wrapped up in recent weeks as well. Another challenge. Now, in the late 1960s, the Acadians of Kent County, New Brunswick were the poorest people of the province per capita, besides where I come from, the North Shore. And Louis Robichaud, who was both the MLA for Kent and the Premier of New Brunswick, sought to eliminate poverty by creating a national park. Now, Kouchibouguac National Park was established in 1969 during the expansion of the National Parks Network in the Atlantic provinces. An agreement was signed between the provincial government of Louis Robichaud, a Liberal government, and the federal government of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, also a Liberal government, to create the park. However, a requirement was that the land be expropriated for park creation. The private properties within the future park area were evaluated by professional evaluators working for or hired by the Department of Natural Resources, or DNR. Now, when they reported the estimated value of the properties to be expropriated, Robichaud himself decided to cut the total estimate in half. A provincial civil servant who had been involved in a similar expropriation for military Camp Gagetown stated the original Kouchibouguac estimates were approximately half of those for Camp Gagetown for equivalent properties. Now, 7 villages were expropriated, comprising 228 families, representing about 1,200 people. Now, those families, mostly all Acadian jobbers, like seasonal workers like fishermen and farmers, had inhabited the area for several generations and were mostly poorly educated and less fortunate. Now, Auguste Landry negotiated the purchase of homes and land by the government. Families received an average of $10,000 to $12,000, depending on the value of the properties. Nearly half accepted the offer. Now, some of the expropriated residents complained because they received much less than others. The expropriated residents also felt cramped in the new, more expensive communities where they settled. Now, during the late 1960s, the issue of expropriation sparked student interest. One of the students, a recent graduate and social activist, was Gilles Thaddeau, head of the Southeast Regional Planning Council, an organization funded by the New Brunswick government. The organization was very active, and Jackie Vautour was noticed. Now, Vautour, who was chairman of the Clairefontaine citizens, directed the resistance to park creation. Now, on November 5th, 1976, the Kent County Sheriff arrived at Clairefontaine with an eviction warrant. Vautour's house was demolished, and his personal effects were sent to a warehouse. The Votour family was housed at provincial government expense in a Richelieu motel. They were eventually expelled in March 1977 by the RCMP using tear gas. Now, the charges were later dropped in July 1978, and the Votour family returned to live in the park. In 1978, 600 expropriated residents signed a petition to get back their properties. Now, when several clashes over the case occurred with the police, Votour eventually refused all offers of land or money from the government. They offered him $20,670, while he requested $150,000. In '79, he challenged the expropriation in court, but the court ruled the expropriation was legal. 200 people then rioted in the park, followed by another riot a few weeks later. The riots precipitated the creation of a commission of inquiry, which placed blame on the federal government, granting compensation of $1.6 million to those who were expropriated. Now, in 1980, Louis Robichaud said the people were happy to be expropriated, and in response, some citizens burned the former premier in effigy. Now, in 1998, Jackie Votour, his wife Yvonne, and her sons Roy and Ron were arrested for illegally harvesting shellfish in the park. In 1999, they were convicted under the law on national parks of Canada. They were exonerated on appeal and were compensated. It was at this moment on the Votour family began to claim Métis heritage, confusing down with title. Well, yes and no, because we were calling ourselves Acadian Metis long before Jackie Votour, but Votour basically joined the rest of us. Acadian Metis was a term was being used as early as the 1970s on the North Shore because we weren't status and we weren't French Acadian, we were a mixture. Or what was Robichaud was called by Charlie Van Horn half-breed, or redbone as we say in the States. Now, Jackie and one of his sons then got a second trial and invoked their ancestral rights. The trial, which began in 2002, was repeatedly postponed until 2006. In 2008, Votour announced the discovery of evidence they had never been legally expropriated. In 2009, he returned to court, defended by lawyer Robert Rideout, and his defense is based on the assumption that the inhabitants of the communities liquidated the form Kouchibouguac or Métis, i.e. they descend from both Micmac and early European settlers, mostly Francophone, and therefore his clients have an aboriginal right to harvest clams according to the Canadian Constitution. However, under legal terms, the word Métis is a French noun used to describe half-breeds, much like the Spanish noun mestiza. Now, Jackie and the community in question are not considered part of the recognized national Métis Nation, nor are they granted Métis title to the land under Section 35 of the Constitution Act. Now, Kouchibouguac remains on Mi'kmaq unceded territory. Now, I self-identify as Acadian Métis, but I don't believe I'm part of the Métis Federation nationally. When I say Métis, might as well call it lowercase, whatever you call it. I am not full Acadian. I am not full Aboriginal. I'm half and half. If you want to call it Eastern Indians or whatever. So, but what's the best way to describe who we are? We're half-breeds. We're half Indian and half French. We're not English. So, I mean, it's just a matter of fact. Are they not recognizing the Acadian Métis because of Jackie Votour, or because it's a legal thing? Like it's half of one and six of one and a half dozen the other. Now, according to historian Alan McEachran, the Jackie Votour case has changed the history of national parks in Canada and how the land is expropriated. According to Professor McEachran, Parks Canada has especially focused on opening parks in northern Canada because there are fewer residents. Go figure. The law now prohibits Parks Canada from expropriating residents to create a park. Now, in 2009, the Canadian government invested $1.3 million in the park, especially to showcase its history and dispossessed communities. Now, the Louisiana musician Zachary Richard met Jackie Votour for the first time in '77 and later organized a benefit concert for the expropriated and wrote La Ballad de Jackie Votour. Now, the film Massa Biel, made in '82 by Jacques Savoie, recalls the story of Jackie Votour. In 2007, Jean Bourbonnet directed the documentary Kouchibouguac. The film opened at the International Francophone Film Festival in Acadie in the same year. Zachary Richard, the narrator, asked in a message shown before the screening that governments officially recognize the injustice that was committed against the dispossessed families. Now, annual reunions have been held in the park over a number of years, and in 2009, historian Ronald Rudin of Concordia announced his intent to write a book and develop a website focusing on the park's history. Now, in 2011, Acadian playwright Emma Haché presented a play telling the expropriation story. And like I said, Jackie passed away in recent days from liver cancer and pneumonia after a failed court case in the Supreme Court about the whole situation. Now, late 60s, early 1970s, no charter. Okay? The Charter of Rights and Freedoms hadn't been established. The expropriation occurred. It basically disbanded nine recognized communities. It basically gave no compensation. It gave no future reference. It basically said, we got your land, and you're only getting what we think it's worth, and governments can manipulate the numbers. See, I'm not objective about this. This could have been easily handled by not expropriating the park, and basically having discussions. But at the time, like I said, because the people in the park were not pure Indians or pure First Nation, they were never given the rights that were given to pure status as well. Acadian Metis or half-breed or whatever, red bone, whatever you call it. There's been a bad relationship between the federal government, the provincial government, and the First Nations across New Brunswick. When you bring up that you're Acadian Metis to a status person, they always try to change. Well, no, that's not what you are. That's if I identify. Okay, give an example, ladies and gentlemen. If I don't identify as a cis, okay, are you going to criticize me because I think I'm a heterosexual? I don't believe in these words cis or whatever. That's for other people. But for me and a lot of people in New Brunswick who support recognizing people like Jackie Vautour, who's fought against the system. Maybe they don't self-identify as Acadian Métis, but they definitely say, I'm not French, pure French, I'm not pure Indian, I'm half and half. So what other word than Acadian Métis do we have? Do we come up with another word? Like mutts? I mean, French mutts? What do we do? Jackie Vautour, he thought he was stupid, and Jackie said, I'm not putting up with this shit. And that's why he fought against it. Now, in 2021, we have a whole generation of people who have never heard of Jackie Vautour, who have never heard of what he fought for. And because English dominates most of the province, it only applies to about 35% of the province, because the Anglophones in the province didn't really understand and didn't really want to care to know. Can I ask you a question, though? If the government at the time was Francophone, and he went into Nakwik to Canterbury, made a provincial park, a French taking land away for a bunch of English people, to be held to pay. But because it was done against Francophone and Acadian and Aboriginal people, or non-status Aboriginal people, it was seen to be, well, we know better. Listen, Jackie Vautour got fucked over by both levels of government. He fought against it, and he went to his grave still fighting against it. And for me, that shows that when he's in the right here, okay? He's always been in the right, but the problem is the federal and provincial legal people that put it together saying he's not in the right. Well, who determines that, But if there would not be a Jackie Vautour, we wouldn't have had the safeguards we have now. Because 40, 50 years later, you would not see any part of Canada expropriated for a park. If you're trying to make a park because of good feeling, how can you make good feeling to take away everything they built? And Acadians, we've been expelled, the expulsion for how many times? Half dozen times? And he did it again. But he did it in a modern era. There was no bolts. They put us on the back of they put the people there in the back of a truck. Or a moving van, whatever you want to call it. So it was a modern day Acadian expulsion, which people never talk about. That's what it was. Anyway, if you like this podcast, give us a comment, a like, comment, or subscribe. For Americans who have never heard of Jackie Vautour, go on YouTube and read up on it, watch the videos. You might be interested in what you find. Because a modern day Acadian expulsion, that's what it was. Have a good day. Bye.